Hello, my friend. Welcome to your sleep story. My name is Stephen Dalton. I'm an Irish storyteller, and it's my great privilege to be the voice that you listen to as you go to sleep tonight. My wife, Rebecca, and I love watching a certain show about thrones and dragons. I'm sure you know the one. And in homage to it, I asked my niece, Megan Moore, to write a story about dragons and a world of dragons, and she has called it The Secrets of Dragonkeep. I hope you like it. One small thing, if you'd like to support my work, you can do so on Patreon. The link is below this video. Okay, let's do the relaxation session now, which will take a few minutes before tonight's sleep story. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and as I do, allow yourself to let go more and more. 10. Feel the support of the bed beneath you, or the floor, or whatever you lie upon tonight. And beneath whatever you lie upon, feel the ever-present support of the earth, our home, our constant support. And with the knowledge of that support now, the awareness of it, see if you can allow yourself to let go a little bit more now, to soften a little bit more now, to ease into this moment a little bit more now. 9. You are safe. Allow my voice to be a friend tonight, an anchor of safety, an anchor of trust that will only ever take you to safe places. And with this knowledge, with this safety, ease more into this moment of peace, this moment of rest, this moment that is yours. 8. Peace lives within you. It is a constant friend, for it is always there, just waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard, waiting to be felt. See if you can find your constant friend tonight. And if you do, where does it dwell within you? And when you find it, see if you can feel it throughout yourself, both in your body and in your mind. 7. The day is done. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. Just let go now. Whatever thoughts you might have about what has been, or whatever thoughts you might have about what will come. In this moment, the best way you can serve yourself is to see those thoughts. Recognize them for what they are, thoughts, and not you, and let them go, for they will still be there tomorrow. So watch them float away now, like clouds in a starlit sky, or leaves on a moonlit river. 6. This is your moment. This is your time. Enjoy that fact. Enjoy that you have nowhere to be, nowhere to go. And by moving towards rest and sleep now, you are doing the best possible thing you can for yourself. Perhaps allow a little coziness in this moment, a feeling that because this is your moment, that you move a little bit more under the covers, a little bit more of a feeling of warmth. 5. Feel into your body now. See where you are still holding. Maybe it's in your feet. Maybe it's in your lower legs. Maybe it's in your belly. Maybe it's in your chest. Maybe your hands. Or maybe your face. Your body has worked hard for you today. It's time to let it rest. 4. Perhaps allow a little gratitude now. Gratitude for the simple things. Gratitude for the shelter you have tonight. Gratitude for life. Gratitude for those you care about. 3. Begin to engage with your imagination now. Begin to see a mystical, magical land, a beautiful castle in the distance, and something magnificent flying high above. too. Checking in one more time now. Releasing any tension. And one. Completely letting go now. As I tell you tonight's sleep story. The air is clear, and the sky is a pale blue, with cotton clouds scattered throughout. You are standing on a balcony of a grand stone castle, overlooking a bustling city with orange terracotta tile roofs. From this high up, the gale tugs at your clothing, and the wind howls in your ears. Beyond the edge of the city is an expansive mountain range. 2 twin peaks tower at the center. A massive domed structure with a copper roof sits nestled between the 2 summits. As you wonder what the strange dome edifice is for, you hear a piercing sound from above the clouds. It sounds like something between the confident roar of a lion and the fierce call of a falcon. Looking up, you see the clouds swirl as they are disturbed by a great force just above them. You see the shadow of wings before a massive, gold-scaled creature bursts through the clouds, emitting another rather loud call. It's a great dragon. Its gilded scales shimmer in the sunlight like armor as it soars over the city with powerful, bat-like wings. You can just make out a rider seated upon the ridged back of the beast, expertly maneuvering the golden-winged creature over the spires and towers of the city beneath. The citizens that roam the streets below look like tiny ants, but you can tell that no one is panicking or retreating into buildings for cover. For seeing a dragon flying overhead is an ordinary, everyday experience in this ancient city. You watch as the dragon and its rider make their way to the great dome beyond the city. So far away do they travel that they eventually become just a speck in the sky before disappearing into the dome. After a moment, you leave the balcony and enter a grand bedchamber. The walls, floor, and ceiling are cut from a smooth stone, as if the room was directly carved from the side of a mountain. Adorned on the walls are iron sconces lit with dancing flames, illuminating the dark corners of the room that the natural light from the arched windows do not reach. The massive room is divided into 2 sections by a wooden partition with intricate designs carved from the finest mahogany. On one side of the partition is an enormous bed with layers of satin covers and silk pillows. On the other side is a cozy seating area with ornate velvet love seats, the color of a deep burgundy. A low table, placed in the center of the seating arrangement, hosts an array of gold platters full of what look like little cakes and fresh pastries. A stunning porcelain kettle with matching teacups sit on one of the trays. Steam breathes from the spout of the kettle, filling the room with an aroma of honey and lavender. You approach the kettle and pour yourself a cup of the aromatic tea. You hug the warm cup in your hands and close your eyes, allowing the pacifying scent of the lavender mixed with wild honey to put you in a state of repose. You take a sip. The tea is still warm, but not hot enough to burn you. You feel the liquid travel down your throat, allowing it to fill your chest in a comforting warmth. The lavender's placid effect washes over you. You don't quite know where you are, but you feel a sense of belonging here in this land of castles and dragons. In fact, you feel safe, so very safe. A very light knock on the door stirs you from the tranquil spell of the tea, and after a moment, the grand mahogany double doors open, the heavy wood groaning under its own weight. A royal servant, dressed in the same deep burgundy as the furniture, enters. He bows his head as he addresses you formally as an honored guest of the Queen. Welcome. I am instructed to give you a tour of Dragonkeep, should you like, my liege, the royal servant says in a light tone, and offers you a warm smile. You accept his offer and follow him from the bedchamber into the hall with a towering arched ceiling. Every few paces, a small iron chandelier hangs, illuminating the space below in orange candlelight. As you follow the attendant, you observe some beautiful tapestries that adorn the stone walls of the corridor. Each one depicts a scene of mankind and dragon, not as adversaries, but rather as allies, working together in battle. Only the descendants of the great queen, Verona Calderion, can be dragon riders. Their bloodline has been touched by the dragons, and thus they are connected. They do not command one another, but rather they have a sacred understanding. To challenge the Calderion kingdom is to challenge the dragons, the royal servant explains, after he catches you admiring the tapestries. Come, I will show you the history of our kingdom. You follow the attendant closely, admiring aspects of the castle as you go. Above nearly every door hangs a banner with the Calderion emblem, a golden dragon in flight with twin summits behind it, embroidered on burgundy velvet. He leads you through the courtyard, which is paved in cobblestone and surrounded by strong, fortified walls. The royal guard, posted at every entrance, are clad in steel armor, bearing the kingdom's emblem proudly on their burgundy capes. The royal servant leads you past clusters of nobles dressed in fine silks and satin. Their necks and fingers are adorned with colorful jewels. They smile and bow their head at you as you pass, making you feel as one of their own. Soon, you enter the castle gardens. Perfectly trimmed topiaries line the gravel path, and rose blooms of reds and pinks peek out from between the hedges. At the center of the garden is a grand marble fountain. Atop the fountain sits a dragon carved from stone. Its wings are splayed out wide, and water pours from its mouth, as if to imitate fire. Near the end of the garden is a small stone gazebo. It has ornate pillars and a domed copper roof that glints in the sunlight. Inside, the walls are painted with breathtaking murals depicting the story of a girl with dark hair and yellow eyes and a great black dragon. In the middle of the circular room is a comfortable pouf surrounded by unlit incense and candles. The attendant lights the candles to better reveal the story on the walls. Years ago, the Calderion kingdom had been locked in war with the opposing Black Stone kingdom for nearly 2 centuries, the royal servant explains as he gestures to a mural showing warriors adorned in burgundy and gold, engaged in battle with soldiers armored in black and silver. Both were formidable forces, but they separated the land in their quest for riches and power. As each year of war passed, the land grew more and more divided, each kingdom being stretched thin on resources and soldiers. In a desperate attempt to unite the kingdoms and end the centuries-long war, Princess Verona was arranged to be married to the Blackstone Prince, who would then become king and rule over all the lands. The attendant moves to another image of a princess with long dark hair begging on her knees before a king in golden armor. The princess pleaded with her father, King Lorsan, to find another way to end the war, for the Blackstones were known to be ruthless and brutal, and if they were to unite the two kingdoms through marriage, the land of Calderion would fall into disarray and chaos. Your gaze is drawn to a portrait of the princess, a beauty with dark hair that ran like rivers past her shoulders and piercing eyes of yellow. Princess Verona has always been special. She was born not with green eyes like her father, or blue like her mother's, but yellow, the royal servant continues. Princess Verona was different. She found that she connected more with animals than with people. People say that a curse was placed on King Lorsan by a dragon that spread to his daughter, and for this reason, the princess was born with the unique ability to see in the dark. In the next mural, a band of knights are depicted fighting a massive black dragon. At this time, people used to fear the dragons, and in an effort to bring peace to the land, past kings always sought to end the dragons. Every year, for hundreds of years, the king would select only the bravest knights to form an elite team of dragon hunters, and each solstice, the hunters would venture into Twin Crown Mountains and try and find the dragons. It is said that King Lorsan even slayed a dragon with a sword made of gold. However, despite his victory, he was never the same afterward. From that point on, King Lorsan banned dragon hunting. Anyone seen near the mountains without his permission would be tried for treason. People say that the dragons placed a curse on the king as he began to obsess over them, trying to learn as much about them as possible without going near the mountain. You are curious about the rest of the story, but the last image of the mural is the king clad in gold armor, slumped in his throne, with his head in his hands, and a great dragon looming over him. The attendant notices your fascination. If you wish to learn how the story ends, sit there and breathe in the aroma of incense. He lights the incense before bowing his head and departing, leaving you alone in the curious building. You feel safe and looked after as you sit upon the little seat, sinking into its cushions and closing your eyes. The jasmine and lily-scented incense fill your nose, tugging at your senses. You relinquish yourself to the pull of the fragrance, allowing it to cloud your mind, taking you on a journey to another world, to another time. When you open your eyes, you see a young, beautiful woman with long, dark brown hair. She is dressed in a burgundy gown with gold lace trim, and a small gilded crown sits upon her head. She turns to face you, looking at you not with blue or green or brown eyes, but yellow. And you know, in that moment, that she is the Princess Verona. Her golden gaze passes over you. You are there with her, but she cannot see or hear you. It is night. Moonlight pours in through the windows of the bedchamber. The princess is alone. Her only company are the flickering candles that illuminate the room. She reaches up and removes her crown before placing it in a velvet-lined box. She then disappears behind a folding screen, only to re-emerge later, dressed all in black. One by one, she extinguishes all of the candles in the room, and you watch as the princess approaches a large crystal mirror leaning against the stone wall. With some effort, the princess slides the heavy mirror over, revealing a seemingly normal wall. She presses a hand on one of the stones in the wall that is darker than the rest and pushes. And with a click, the wall begins to slide open to reveal a passageway. You follow the princess on silent feet, keeping up with her quick pace like her own shadow as she descends a staircase. Princess Verona moves swiftly and silently as she navigates the hidden passageways of the castle expertly, as though she has taken this route hundreds of times. Her golden gaze allows her to see without light, and she blends in seamlessly with the night as she makes her way to the royal stables. The guards outside the stable remain completely oblivious as their princess tacks up a horse as black as night and sneaks out the back. Verona mounts the steed before taking off on a path into the surrounding forest. She rides so fast, and it's as if the trees part for her, clearing the way for a princess on a mission to save her kingdom from its doomed fate. It is the night before she is to wed the Blackstone Prince, and in a last-ditch effort to bring peace to the land, she charges towards the forbidden Twin Crown Mountains. The jewel peaks of the great mountainscape loom overhead, growing larger as you and the princess draw nearer. She continues up the mountain until the pass becomes too steep for the horse. She dismounts and continues the climb, pure determination etched onto her features as she uses her hands and feet to ascend the pass. It's clear that you and the princess are close to the home of the dragons as you spot scorched trees and boulders along the trail. Here, everything is still. There are no birds or small critters in the brush, for even the wildlife know to avoid the dragons. The air is thin from the altitude, but Princess Verona does not falter. Driven by conviction, she presses on. The princess approaches a colossal cave in the side of the mountain, and she ventures inside. On the ground of the cave are signs of knights who have once fought dragons here. Swords, daggers, crossbows, and spears litter the cave floor, but Verona steps over them, and as Verona's shadow, you feel as she felt in this distant memory. There is not an ounce of fear, not even the fear of failure. The princess only brims with fortitude as she presses on. It's dark in the cave, but because of her yellow eyes, Verona is not impeded by night, and darkness has no effect on her, and as her shadow, none on you. Her golden gaze grants her the gift to see what lays in front of her clearly. There, at the back of the cave, lies a dragon. It is asleep. Its slow and steady breathing rumbles throughout the cave with each inhale and each exhale. And although Verona does not fear the dragon, and nor do you, she knows better than to wake it from its slumber. So she sits on a nearby boulder and waits patiently. Hours tick by, and the princess still waits. Eventually, the beast stirs. Verona watches as its eyes open. Golden orbs narrow into slits as the dragon focuses its gaze on the princess. Its head, which is larger than 10 horses, lifts slowly, but instead of reacting badly. The dragon observes her, watching as she stares back at him through her yellow eyes. The dragon then speaks. Its ancient voice is deep and guttural, as though it hasn't spoken in centuries. 4 centuries. Little men have come here, bedecked with iron swords and arrows of fire. Yet you come with nothing but the clothes on your back. What do you want, golden-eyed girl? Princess Verona bows deeply before the dragon. I am here to ask for your aid, Great One. The dragon startles you with a laugh. You come here to ask for my aid? You, princess of the mortals, who come every year to slay me, are asking for my mercy. The princess stands tall and looks at the dragon directly. I am not asking you for mercy. I am asking for your power, she says bravely. The dragon rears its great head before coming very close to Verona, smoke billowing from its nostrils. You should beg for my mercy, golden-eyed girl. You will need it if you want to see the light of day again. I will not see the light of day if I return to the castle, Great One. My kingdom will be ruined if I marry the Blackstone Prince, and the attacks on you and your kin will increase tenfold, the princess explains desperately, unflinching against the dragon's threat. The dragon breathes in deeply, inhaling her scent. Years ago, your father, the king, came to try and slay me. Instead, he found another dragon. After this, I spoke to your father. I cursed him and all of his descendants to come. If a dragon died by order of the ruler of Calderion, the same fate would befall its descendants. If you have come to seek a way to break this curse, then you are a fool. I have not come to break the curse, and I do not wish to bring ruin upon the dragons. I only wish to align our common interests and bring peace to both of our kingdoms. Please, help me end the war and unite the land, Verona pleads. You watch the interaction from the shadows as the great dragon considers the forlorn princess. Once again, it's as if time itself is holding its breath, waiting for the dragon's response, which will determine the fate of the kingdom for eons to come. He assesses her, scrutinizing her very being, as if those omnipotent golden eyes could peer directly into her soul and bear her deepest secrets and intentions. Finally, the great beast speaks. For centuries, your species has plagued this mountain, leaving chaos in its wake. But you come to me without fear or hesitance. You have bore your soul to me, and I have deemed it worthy and pure. If I come into alliance with you, it will only be with your bloodline, princess. Each of your descendants will bear the mark of the dragon as you do, and only they will know the ancient tongue of the dragons. You will serve and respect us, and in return, we will offer our power and cease the carnage upon your kind. Relief washes over you and the princess as she thanks the great dragon, tears in her eyes. You will call me Baelor, the Redeemer. Come, we have much to do. The dragon stands, but the cave is not tall enough for him to reach his full height. You and the princess follow as Baelor prowls towards the exit, the cave shuddering under his thunderous steps. Outside the cave, the light of the coming dawn illuminates the black, almost iridescent scales of Baelor. You watch in awe as the great dragon stretches to his full height, towering above the ancient pines. He turns to the princess and lowers his body, nodding to her in an unspoken understanding. As Princess Verona climbs onto the back of Baelor, you follow suit, invisible as her shadow. Verona clings tightly to the ridges on his back as he spreads his massive bat-like wings and lifts off into the sky. The wind rushes into you and Princess like a torrent as the great dragon propels himself off the mountain. You feel safe here and cared for. The trees look like tiny specks below now, and Baelor steadies himself, and the force of the wind calms around him as he soars towards the city. The orange of the sun is peeking over the horizon, painting the sky in a gradient of pink to blue. As you glide over the city, you can see people on the streets below gape up at the massive dragon. But the princess pays no mind to those citizens below. You approach the monumental stone castle and circle over the courtyard where the guards are already gathered. Under Verona's guidance, Baelor lands on the wall surrounding the courtyard, stones crumbling under the sheer weight of him. You see a man that you assume to be King Lorsan, dressed in stately robes, with a crown perched on his head, rushing into the yard, accompanied by the Blackstone King and Prince. Baelor bares his teeth at the guards, who draw their weapons at the sight of him. The king spots his daughter seated upon the back of the great dragon, and immediately tells his men to stand down. The men exchange apprehensive glances, but do as the king commands and lower their weapons. Now, with everyone's full attention, the princess stands up on the dragon's back and addresses the crowd. I, Princess Verona of Calderion, declare this war over. From this moment on, she announces resolutely, before turning to the Blackstone Prince. I will not marry you, and you will not have a place on the throne, Prince. The dragons have declared their loyalty to the Calderion bloodline. Should you dare challenge my kingdom, then you also challenge the might of the dragons. The Blackstone royals take a step back as Baelor fixes his piercing gaze upon them. You will take your forces and leave this land immediately, the princess continues. Should I see you or your army set foot on Calderion soil without my say, then you will be at his mercy, she says callously, gesturing to the great black dragon. You watch as the Blackstones scramble for the exit, not waiting another moment in the presence of the great dragon. The Calderion knights swear their fealty to the princess and Baelor as they celebrate the end of the centuries-long war. You almost want to stay to celebrate with them, but your surroundings start to fade, engulfed by a fog, as your senses are filled with jasmine and lily. Another scene appears before you a moment later. It's Princess Verona, adorned in robes bearing the royal colours and the Calderion emblem. She kneels before her father, who places a gilded crown upon her head. As she stands, the king declares her the first queen of Calderion, and the crowd cheers for her. The vision fades along with the fog, and then slowly you become aware of your surroundings back in the gazebo. The candles around you are melted piles of wax, and the once full incense stick is now nothing but ash. Your gaze is drawn to the portrait of Queen Verona on the wall, which you now look at with high reverence after witnessing her acts of bravery and gallantry to save her kingdom.